today we are talking about something everyone loves, which is business. So in having a career in art, I think the most important thing, or also another very important thing that we tend to want to neglect because no one enjoys it, is the business aspect. And I think that it's definitely worth talking about because we tend to put that on the back burner, or we neglect that aspect of having a career in freelancing or having an art career, especially if you're looking for longevity. I think it's important to keep these things in mind, and I think it's most important that you learn as much as you can, and you may not necessarily have to. You can hire people out to do some of these things, so you can free up your time to do to do the art part, but it is still important for you to learn and keep in mind, and to remember that no matter who you hire for the job, it's still your career, your life, and you still have to play the biggest role in all of that. The recommendation is, if you don't know how to do something, hire someone who knows it well, or who knows how to do it well. And I think that's still very important, and definitely something worth doing. But you still should learn a little bit about that job or that specialty, because again, it is your career, it is your life, and at the end of the day, the rewards and consequences will be yours. So it's worth learning about the business, any business, whether it be art or any career you get into. It's worth knowing a little of everything, just so you can kind of keep track, because you still have to oversee these different things. So let's start. I have made notes, and we'll get back to it, I guess. I stumbled on this idea because I think and changes are unavoidable, and I see discussions about changes in the field and updates on what different freelancers are doing, and how each of us are adjusting, for whether it be social media, for bringing our work to the public, or acquiring different types of work, or work options, and maybe branching out into different things. So there's a lot going on, and technology definitely has a large role to play, and the economy has a large role to play. And I think that, and everyone talks about AI, that has a role, I guess that belongs under technology. But I think that no matter what, changes has the only constant is change. So there will always be changes, and back, just throughout history, and way after we're all gone, things will constantly change and evolve. And I think that whether you believe in science or not, or Darwin, evolution, I think that is key, and just to be flexible, to learn how to adjust accordingly as the world changes, as technology changes. We may not love all the changes. Some will have benefits. Most will have benefits and drawbacks. So I think the most important thing is to maybe keep a cool head and see how we can work with the current circumstance or situation. So you can't control or force a change, or keep things the same. Ranting on, but let's move on to what can we do. And there are some things that no matter what the changes are, no matter what's going on, I think there are some basics to keep in mind, again, in having a career in art, or having just some steady or longevity in whatever career choice you make, like I said, whether it's art or any other field. But in particular, I'll talk about freelancing and having a career in art, because I think that's what we're all kind of doing and trying to do. So I've made some notes. Oh yeah, handwritten paper, pen, of course, it's what I do. So I think that I kind of touched on like the business part of it, which is critical if you want to have a career, because you're working for businesses or you're starting a business. And the most important thing to remember is you're not just an artist, and you're not just working job to job. You have to remember that you are, whether you like it or not, you are running a small business. And what does that mean? That means there's there's bookkeeping, there's communication, there's financing, there's budgeting, scheduling. All these things are present in small business, and all these things need to be present in our minds as we seek a career or to make a living as a freelancer. So it's good to learn a little bit about like what all these little things mean and how they play, what roles they play in a freelance career. I think that bookkeeping is under the accounting category, but it's also important. It's important because you do have to file your own taxes, budget for yourself in terms of if you're paying for your own supplies, if you are scheduling work, which is huge. I say bookkeeping it is tied into scheduling, because obviously how much work you do in a month, how much you can do in a month, and what you need to live on in that month. So bookkeeping is what are your expenses going to be, how much work do you need to do to pay for those expenses. And I'm talking about business expense as well as your living expense if you have a family. So I think bookkeeping, just the basics, what's coming in, what's going out, what do you need to set aside for your easily estimated expenses, and you know what those are, like just if you're working from home, what are your utilities, what supplies you need, so you can kind of estimate that. So I think this is where you either each of us will have to figure out for ourselves. And I think that there are videos and books and all kinds of stuff that will kind of give you guidelines on how people do their bookkeeping, or how each person will approach like their own business. But no matter what you watch or what you read, I think you still have to do the work and figure out what works for you, because whatever guidelines are, whether it be in life or in business, they're just guidelines. Each one of us will have to customize what works for us, just like when you're doing art. I mean, you can kind of learn from a person, but at the end of the day, you will sort of adjust to what works for you. So that's my advice. So I think it's important, like I said, bookkeeping, just to kind of keep things straight and give yourself an idea of what you need to do and what to expect, so you're not like surprising yourself, or you don't catch yourself if you can do it monthly, you can do weekly, whatever small bites you need to take. Like I said, customize it for what works for you. So I think bookkeeping is important, and also it kind of helps you to estimate the amount of taxes that you need to pay to what's coming in. And I think you can just roughly, like I said, customize it for yourself. Just, you can, whatever is coming in, say your check is for 1,000, you can kind of say, okay, why don't I set aside? And again, back to the importance of bookkeeping and financing, I think that it's definitely important to set aside a little something for savings. And I know everyone says, I can't do it, I need every penny. I think that right off, it's totally like a mind game. You just say, you're getting a check for 1,000. Just tell yourself you're only getting a check for 900. That extra 100 needs to be set aside, because as a freelancer, your schedules are so unpredictable. If you can get a steady schedule, that's wonderful. And if you can keep that going as long as possible, that's wonderful. But you cannot really like count on it. If you can, great, that's wonderful, you're doing awesome. But always try to set aside a little, because you're a human being, you can get sick, things do happen, it's life, it's unpredictable, and a company can go under, things happen all the time, and that's, like I said, life. The more you can save, the better off you can be, and it's all going to feed into less panic, less stress later. So if you say you can't now, you definitely you're in a better position now than you would be later in time of emergencies. And I touch on this because we all see how many GoFundMes and artists get sick all the time. Where, like I said, we work under such a weird schedule, and we're not always good about taking care of ourselves. So, and we'll touch on that later. But again, try to set aside. You get a check for 1,000, you're only getting a check for 900, and that's before taxes. So just assume for taxes anywhere from 20 to 30%. So the 10% for yourself, anywhere from 20 to 30, and I'm going rough numbers, guys. So you can say, okay, from the 900, take out 20, 30%, set it aside, because the IRS will want their share. They don't care what you're doing to get that. They want that share. So set aside for your taxes. It'll save you a lot of sweat and tears later. So from that, like, just a rough paycheck estimate, that's just rough bookkeeping example. You can, if you're doing well, obviously you can get an accountant, but you still need to have a rough idea, and you can still communicate with them what you would like to do and get their advice on what they recommend. Everyone lives in different places, so everyone needs to kind of make an estimate, based on where they live, their situation, whether you have a family or not, if you're living in expensive areas or not. So it's still a good idea, rather than having this mindset of, I have 1,000 coming, yay, I have 1,000 to spend. You do not. You have 900 barely, and then you have minus 20 to 30% that goes to taxes, and whatever remains, you have to estimate what your monthly expenses would be for the basics. So it will get deducted. It sounds terrible, but it keeps you on track for what you need to do. So, like I said, business is not the fun, subject of having a career in freelancing or in art, but it is important because it will be a huge or key player in terms of especially, you know, if you're working for a long time, I mean, you can really get into trouble really fast, and it continues to accumulate. So good habits and bad habits, they accumulate. You know, the consequences and rewards will accumulate. So I recommend just getting into that habit as soon as possible. And if you can invest that, whatever, the 10% you can put in savings, but if you can invest, it really, 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 really helps, even if you divide it up. And it doesn't have to be like complicated investing. You can start by, like, you know, if you want like a no-brainer, you can do like a retirement account or a simple like money market or a CD or whatever. So just look into these things and see what works for you. Kind of hide that money away, because later on it will come in to save you, especially now. I think a lot of changes in career in comics, and I think most of us need it more than ever. But if you can get in that habit right away, that's great. So I think that goes under accounting and financing roughly. You know, just do what you can, and even if you can't do it anyway. And the second part of this whole career thing is like the communications. So all these things will take time. Take time away from your creative time to draw, ink, paint, whatever. So to actually produce the art. So all these things will take time and mental attention, I'll just say it that way, because you will think about it. You'll be thinking about it, to organize it, or planning time to do all these things. So if you need to hire an accountant, or if you have even, you know, like a family member, keep track of, you know, books, what's coming in, what's going out, and the communication, you can, if you have, you know, family who is working with you, whether it be a significant other or whoever, you know, you can have assist you, and they can collect the pay, or, you know, that's for you to work out. But if you want to assign someone to take care of these duties, so it frees your time up to tend to the art part. Stop saying that. Okay, so communication is also very important, whether you're communicating with agents, or you're doing not agents, but editors or publishers, the back and forth, the emailing, texting, or, you know, if you're doing shows, or if you're doing commissions, if you, and it takes time, you're going back and forth, pricing, scanning, all that. If you have, if you choose to have to be represented by an agent who can take care of these responsibilities, especially sending out emails, seeking work, or sending out samples, and communicating back and forth on work agreements, maybe you have an agent doing this for you. You know, that helps. Again, it frees your time up to create art, to do the fun or the creative aspect of the career. So having someone tend to all this back and forth, where you're not constantly going, okay, you're trying to work, and then, you know, email or text or message comes in, you have to stop, and sometimes you're in the zone and it's not convenient. Whether you have someone tend to all that so you don't have to deal with it at all, or you schedule like a time for yourself. I only read messages or emails or reply during the hours of, I don't know, like 8 to 9, or the hours of 5 to 6, where you are not, your attention is not going towards that at all, and you have like a huge section of time scheduled just to do creative work without being interrupted. So whether you get an agent, tend to that, all that, and they can go, you know, they can represent you, whether with phone calls or emails, but the back and forth communication can sometimes, you know, add up, and it takes up a lot of your time and attention. So if you want to free that up for yourself, and you can be more productive, you know, with your art or with work, without the constant interruption. So that's worth doing. Some people, I don't have an agent just because. So, that's not that's something that you can absolutely do, that will help out to free up your time, especially if your work is starting to pick up and you have so much work to get done. It could become just like more like a mental challenge, because you're trying to tend to a little everything, and that makes it hard to really like free up your mind to create and do your best work. So if you want to work with an agent, that's absolutely fine, and you just know, like, if you have people representing you, taking on these duties, freeing you up, you have to understand that whatever money you're making, it's taking up their time too. So they need to be compensated, and you just know and understand that right off, so you're not going to be like all stressed out by it later. So everything will cost something, whether it's time or money or sweat. So accountants for bookkeeping, and you have your agents that can also help you schedule. And I think at the end of the day, like I said, I don't have an agent, I don't know how they schedule it, but I think it's important, again, for you to kind of know and understand how the bottom line. I think that agents can accept work for you or negotiate work for you, but I think you have to really be the one to say how much is too much, and what type of work. You have to communicate with your agent how much work is too much, or if you feel that maybe the financial agreement they've made is too heaven forbid it's ever too high. But if you feel like it is you're doing too much work for very little money, that's something that you need to talk to them about too, like whatever the going rates are, and what you're willing to accept or not willing to accept. I think that that also is something that you need to work out with your agent. And actually that now leads to another very important subject, which is how much pay do you your financial compensation for your work, your page rate, or excuse me, I don't know if anyone does hourly rate, but page rates, comic book wise anyway. I always say, you can't tell people what you're worth, because we all think differently, and I think that what you feel that you're worth or your time is worth is going to be, even if they think you believe you're worth that, their budgeting might not allow it. So it's up to you whether or not you want to accept that job. And they may think you're worth that much, but they just can't pay it. That's also something. And I think that you have to understand that what your restrictions or what specifications you're working with, they have different restrictions and responsibilities they're working with, and we don't always know what those are. So you just kind of have to make the best decision that you can, and allow them to make the decisions that they need to, and those two things may not meet, so you might not get that job. And whatever they're offering, if you accept the job, you're basically saying, okay, if it's a little lower, you are basically saying, okay, if they say you're worth $50 and you say you're worth $100, if you accept the $50, you're basically saying, okay, I am worth $50. But when you do that, that's not necessarily a deal breaker if you accept lower pay. And I think I've said it before, you have to think about how else can you compensate if you're just starting off, and if you can learn on that job. I think you have to consider consider the benefits other than the financial benefits. Is it working with a team that you, or individuals that you've always wanted to work with that you wouldn't otherwise have the opportunity to? Is it open? Will it, or can you use it in a way that it will open other doors? Can you make connections through that, that particular project or job? So these are other ways that you can compensate yourself. If it's worth taking a lower pay for, think about how else you can compensate yourself. Can I learn? Can I build a name for myself through this job? Which is, a big part of it. And I know there's a lot of discussions, that's going around about like you're maybe not getting credit, so you don't think that you're going to get any kind of exposure from doing a certain job. Maybe you negotiate. I will accept this rate, as long as you can credit me. Maybe they can't pay you higher, but I don't think it costs so much to credit someone. But if you can figure out how else you can get compensated for a lower pay and what else you might need to build your career, and if you can get that, that is also, I think, worth considering, taking a lower pay for. But how much lower, is up to you. So that's something, again, you have to customize for yourself. What do you need, and how can you use this to build your career on? I mean, there are different things that you need to build a career. You need to build a resume, you need to build a work history, you need to learn about scheduling. How much can I do under pressure? How do I work with a team? What can I learn about the business, and not just specifically what my particular specialty is, but how everything comes together. So just learning about the business. If you're ambitious and if you want to eventually maybe publish your own work, or take a different role in the career, just learning, just the education, just learning as you go, having it be almost like a job training, or training in a certain field. So again, this goes back to pay for your work. A little bit of it might be in the financial aspect, some in business, some connections, some, sometimes it's just learning about yourself. Is this going to be the right career for me? Is this going to be the right lifestyle for me? How do I juggle or manage it? So learning a little bit as you go. So pay comes in different ways. It just depends on what you need. And I think all these things are important for longevity in freelance career. So I think we touched on the accountants, the communications agents, work schedule. Work schedule is, can be a little tough in the beginning because you don't necessarily know how you produce under pressure. And workflow, it could be a little unpredictable. I mean, you can agree to work with an editor, say, you have a book that should start in June, and say on a 4-week schedule, you have 4 weeks to produce that. Maybe the creative team in front of you is a little behind, and it just kind of builds up, but the book needs to go to the publishers at a certain time, so that doesn't change. And you can sit around for like a week or two with nothing to do. Well, you still have to pay your bills and your expenses. So maybe you pick up more than one job, and you kind of know that you'll have to juggle a few things. So maybe you work with another artist, and you can do like a shared work type of thing, where when they have work that they're getting behind on, you can help them. And if you're having work that you're behind on, they can help you, or you can get assistance. So these are different ideas of how to kind of cover for that like slow workflow and still get some kind of an income. So different ways of figuring this stuff out. And I think that a lot of us, or some of us may have overbooked to make sure that we do have that income to cover the expenses that we have, like the basic living expenses. And if you really, really, really can't fall behind on anything and you want to make sure you're covered, you can tend to book a few things and then fall, a little behind. So that's the danger zone. And I myself, I'm not giving these advice because I've done it all perfectly. I'm actually giving all these advices because I've done them very imperfectly. And if I can help someone consider these things, the earlier the better. So yeah, scheduling, work, and all that. And another thing, not so new, but social media is another thing to juggle, and I think that contributes to it. Can be a wonderful source of support and exposure in terms of bringing your work to the public and getting support from other freelancers or colleagues, or also like learning or shared work information. So social media can be great for that. But it also, everything has, like I said, benefits and drawbacks, but so we have to learn how to juggle those things. And social media, I think, is tough for me to juggle anyway. I think that we're hearing a little everything. There again, trolls, or sometimes whatever you want to call them, but there's negativity too. So just learning how to manage that so you don't take it in and allow that to I don't know, I don't want to keep using overly used words, but to take in that the toxic information. By toxic, I don't necessarily mean that it's people are doing it out of ill will, but just things that will affect you negatively, to take it to heart. So whether you limit yourself to not reading comments, or only reading certain ones, or only accepting certain ones, but that's something you need to learn to manage as well. How do I not allow this to affect me or inhibit my workflow or my just self-confidence or growth? So these are things that you have to manage, and it's always going to be there. And people always have thoughts and ideas, but when we're walking around, we don't hear people's thoughts and ideas. But on social media, they're happy to share it, whether they like your work or not. There will always be someone who will not like your work. Maybe because they don't like you, maybe they're just having a bad day, maybe they're just whatever. So many ideas, and you have to take everything with a grain of salt. Is this actually helping me? Maybe they're actually helpful, suggestions. All these things exist. You have to learn how to filter them, consider it. Is it helpful? Can I use this? Is this true? Will this help me if I consider, looking at it this way? Maybe it will help your growth. Maybe it won't. So you just have to know, like, there's so much out there in the world that you can either use it as a tool, or it will, work against you. I feel like social media is like alcohol or junk food or anything like that. Sometimes you give yourself a little bit because it's silly fun, but if you have too much of it, if you consume too much of it uncontrolled, it could kind of take over and inhibit your own growth, personal, financial, mental, all that stuff. So social media is something to kind of learn. And it's tough, I know. That's something you have to learn to, juggle as well. If in working and we I feel like, we all feel we need it to represent ourselves, to make ourselves available for, maybe future work, or it's a sample of what we do. So for work and business connections, it's it's beneficial that way. But open that door, anyone can come in. So learning how to manage that is a thing. I think I've touched on a lot of things. Well, okay, let's go to the last thing I have here is health. It could be physical, mental, medical, all these things. And like I said, I think that having a career in comics, or I don't know what it's like in other art fields because I've just mainly worked in comics. I don't know what it's like in illustration or fine art, but in comics you can tend to lose track of time and scheduling because you're going from one book to the next, especially if you're on a regular book monthly book schedule, or if you're coordinating with other creators in different areas of the world. So scheduling could be a little crazy. It's daytime where they're at, and it's nighttime where you're at, and you're trying to coordinate schedule, or printing or publishing. So scheduling can be scheduling. All this can be a little tricky, which is really, really easy to allow yourself to neglect your health. And like I said, myself and many other colleagues that I know, we've kind of just said, okay, I'll do that later, whether it be a little walk or eating healthy or just a little simple stuff. I will run. I think earlier I would run whenever I can, and sometimes I'll be under deadline schedule where this is not going to be unusual, because I'm sure you've heard other artists saying this before, like we won't leave the house for weeks, maybe months, or go outside for weeks or months, and where you're just going from if you're in bed at all, like bed, table, bed, and you're just kind of like nibbling on stuff and running on coffee. So it's a very unhealthy lifestyle, and it takes intense discipline and scheduling to make sure that you get a little bit of fresh air, a little bit of sunshine, a little bit of movement, because it's really easy to slide into that really unhealthy sedentary lifestyle, and before you know it, you're getting sick, you have no money, you can't work. So the whole I have to work thing is no longer an option. It's like I cannot work, and it could be very serious health issues. So try to integrate that healthy, even if you can do a little bit, lifestyle in from the beginning and stick to it. It's the whole discipline. It's all the things we don't want to do. This is all the adulting things that we do not want to talk about or do not want to do. But like I said, you're the one to either enjoy the rewards or live with those consequences. It's gonna be you. It's your life. It's your career. So you have to play the big role, and you can't. You can have people to blame. Why didn't you remind me? Maybe your significant other didn't feed you well, remind you to go outside, and maybe your editors are like putting you on the schedule or that. But you have to be the one to say, okay, I can only do this, or I get it. It's gonna be hard. Trust me, I get it. But you still have to, at some point, you will not have a choice. So try to make those choices, try to get those habits in earlier. The earlier, the better, and stick to it so it becomes like just a part of, it's like walking and breathing. It needs to be integrated into your life. So yeah, physical, just any little thing, whether there's something you enjoy doing, moving, whether it's dancing, running, walking, biking, skating, have fun with it. Don't choose something that you're going to hate because you want it to be a reward. I mean, as kids, we play all the time, and there are so many different things. Go to a playground. I mean, I know it's a little different now, but whatever it is, even it's just a little walking, go jump around, jump rope, whatever. Find something that you actually enjoy, so you can spend maybe 10, 15 or minutes doing it at the minimum. Just go and play, move your body. Mental health, just stop feeding it the crap that that your device is feeding you. Go out and give yourself the good stuff. There's crap in the world, but there's also a lot of good in the world. And the more, whatever you feed, that's what you're going to crave more. It's like food. Whatever you feed, that's what you're going to crave. When you begin to switch, it feels really weird and you don't like it, but you just know what you're doing to yourself. And it's not what someone's posting. That's what people will post, whatever. But what you choose to continue to watch or to read or to look, it's up to you. And you can turn it all off and be angry, or you can just choose. You can say no. So, and like I said, it's easy to do because it's like the Jerry Springer show, and what else was it? Oh, the Jerry Springer show and the National Enquirer, all wrapped up. That's what we're surrounded by now on social media with people. But there's so much other stuff that's going on, and it's not that you need to bury your head in the sand, but you need to also you also need to give yourself variety. It's like eating without drinking or something. You need to feed yourself some good stuff too, just so you can have the heart and mind to like to continue, for lack of better words, just to continue. So be mindful what you feed your mental needs. So medical, stay on top. You don't need to go and do every trendy thing that's out there, but as you get older, you might need little things. Just kind of be mindful of all the little things, and don't neglect little, oh, it's just a pinch or cramp here or there. Pay attention to what's normal, what won't go away. Stuff like that. I mean, we tend to just say, oh, I'll tend to it later. A heart attack won't be put aside for later. Your burst appendix won't be set aside to be dealt with later. So all these things we've all, heard and felt about. So I just think that you need to be fair to yourself. You're working for a life and you want to have this wonderful life, but you need to enjoy this life because it goes by so fast, as we all know, and we're seeing and reading and all that. So this session is going much longer than I had expected, but again, I felt that it was important to discuss. I know it's a one-way discussion, but hopefully you guys are, I've planted some seeds in your mind, and I hope that some of this stuff will be helpful. Like I said, none of my videos or anything that I post or anything I suggest, it is not a Bible. It is not like, law or, written regulations. They're just suggestions. They're my opinions. They're my ideas. They're my, experiences. So if it's helpful for any of you, that's wonderful. If it's not, there's so many other channels. Please, you do not need to come here and spend time here hating me. Go find something that you love. Yeah, so I'll close this with what gave me this idea to talk about work and work schedule and the business aspect of having a career in freelancing. Again, don't forget, you're running a small business. You are playing the biggest role in your career, in your life. Even if you hire someone else to do it, you need to know what's going on. Stay in touch with all those things, because they can always take off and you will not know what's going on, how to do anything. You can delegate that responsibility, but don't neglect it. Don't, just completely toss it and say, well, this person was supposed to do it. Yeah, but you assigned that person to do it, so it still comes down to you. So just saying. Okay, back to what gave me this idea. So I was cleaning up a few boxes, and whatever you need to do to organize yourself, I still use Post-it notes. I still write like notes on these little yellow things. This is all warped and crazy. This is what I had on my desk on a clip hanging on my desk. I had a couple of these for personal and for business. This is my professional bookkeeping and my personal assistant. And I used to do like a few projects at a time, like monthly projects. I think one book a month is wonderful. But at the time when I was starting, I wanted to get myself as much experience and exposure as possible. So I was doing a few projects. And I have here, so for the month of January, I'm not sure what year, but I have, so I have monthly work. So what I've finished, so I know what to voucher for, and once the vouchers are paid, I will come in with a little highlighter and cross that off, so I know that I've vouchered for it and I've been paid for it, and then I can kind of get a good idea of what's coming in for that month. So this is my fancy spreadsheet, and this is kind of fun to look back at. So this is story time now, so if you're done, it's fine, you can go. But this is silly story time. So this was kind of fun to look at, because I have here for January, February, my little Asian accent's coming in. So I have Robin 136, 22 pages, Robin 137, 22 pages. I have Intimates, which and the Robin I did with oh my gosh, well, again, this is like different books. I was starting to do some work with DC and Intimates. That was still Wildstorm. So this is about the time when it was still DC, Wildstorm. DC is just recently acquired Wildstorm. So I also was doing some licensing work. I was doing little King James comics for licensing. King James, of course, LeBron James. So I have my little log, LeBron James, 19 pages. So I did okay that month, but it was quite crazy. And again, scheduling comes into play. So I would I would schedule myself to where, okay, from 7 to about 4 or 5, I would do the biggest project that I had going on, and that at the time was doing issues of Robin. So that time from like 7 or 8 to 4 or 5, I would work on the biggest project, and then get a little something to eat. So from like 5:05 or 5:10 to about 8, I would work on the second thing. So 8 in the evening. So I'll take a little break, play with my dog, feed my dog, or sometimes if I have to drive home or drive to the studio. So a little bit of commute time, and usually from like, if I get started again from like 9 to anywhere from like 2 to 3 or 4, I will work on like the third or the fourth project, or what I didn't finish for the day from the previous, for the larger projects. I would wrap up whatever I could there. So, if I can, I'll sleep maybe from like, 3 or 4 to 6 or 7. So it wasn't a whole lot of sleeping. So I did that for a few years, and this was the only way for me to keep track of all those things. Usually 2 books and maybe whatever, like pin-ups or covers I could do, and then whatever licensing work I could get. It could be merchandising, style guides, or small custom books that licensing would do. But yeah, whatever I could, to kind of get more work or exposure, and I would schedule myself like that. The main book would be like during the big chunk of the day, like regular working hours, and then it would be like my second job would come in the evening, and then my graveyard shift would be like the last thing, or wrap up whatever I wasn't able to finish from the day, and then get a quick little nap, and then start the next day again. So scheduling is really helpful. I mean, get in a good habit, whether you need to do this or set your time. I don't know, there are probably apps now. I don't recommend that schedule, but if you're trying to start off, like I said, it's whatever you can manage to do, and don't neglect your health, which I did for a long time. And just with anyone else, you pay for it eventually. You don't have a choice, but try not to do that if you can. So I hope some of the stuff was helpful. Thanks again for being here with me. I appreciate it. Later.